Chatting to a guy this morning in the albergue, the hostel, who was more or less blind and is walking the Camino on his own. He has retina degeneration and a lot of courage. His wife thinks he's crazy, and yeah, he's walking the Camino. He's doing sort of 8, 9, 10 days at a time each year, and slowly chipping through a full Camino. Really amazing in my opinion, but quite inspirational. He said, like a lot of people think he's nuts. He was speaking in Spanish, obviously, but I disagree. It reminds me of it's very different, but it reminds me of a scene in Eric Bana's documentary Love the Beast, about his Ford Falcon, and when he was rallying in the Targa Tasmania with it. And one thing Dr. Phil said in that documentary was like something along the lines of, obviously Targa is dangerous. Eric Bana was wondering whether he should be doing it. He had a young family, lots of responsibilities, and and Dr. Phil said, your kids need you to be alive, to be your fullest self, as well as being physically alive with a beating heart, etc. So what he was sort of saying is, like, if you don't do anything, you can be alive but not alive. You can be just locked up in a flat somewhere watching Netflix. Now, I recognise that around the world right now there are plenty of people in quarantine, and I'm off footloose and fancy free, living the dream. So I appreciate that, having been very heavily quarantined in Barcelona. But in normal life, lots of us elect to stay at home, and maybe we're not really truly living. So we need to find that middle point of staying alive but being alive. So how does one be alive while staying alive? And an obvious point on that is fear. Fear is something that's designed to keep us alive, staying alive, as as ABBA or the Bee Gees would say. I can't remember. Bee Gees, no? The fear at the same time can prevent us from being alive, which the Bee Gees didn't give us a lot of advice about, sadly. But obviously, like, fear then is quite key. Fear is designed, as I said, to keep us alive, but a lot of the time we overdo it, not through conscious decision or choice, and it ends up preventing us from living. This is a very open-ended topic, but I could kind of go anywhere with it. But one thing I wanted to say was that how do we be alive as it were. I would do the inverted commas, but it's pretty damn cold. How do we do it? Well, often, as Jeff Bezos would say, it's easier to figure out how not to do something. So, in this instance, how do we be alive? We be not very afraid. We don't let fear control us. The thing that's going to prevent us from being alive is fear controlling us. So getting on top of that can only be a good thing. How do you get on top of fear? Well, that's a good question that I hadn't thought of. I would imagine, at least in my life, the way I've approached that has been through exposure therapy. So you're probably aware, but one of the most effective treatments for anxiety is through exposure. Now, you don't want to go, if you're like suffering from extreme anxiety, and bear in mind that I'm not a trained clinical professional, so take all of this with a pinch of salt, full disclaimer alert. But if you've got really bad anxiety, you don't, if you're a high school kid, young man, and you don't go and do the most difficult thing you can do to expose yourself to anxiety, because that'll just mess up your confidence and make you even more anxious. But maybe choose something easy, and the thing that happens is it's a sliding scale. So as you continue to expose yourself, it gets easier and easier, and the scale comes down. So maybe a 10 on the anxiety scale is asking a cute girl on a date, and a 1 is finding I don't even know what a 1 is, tying your shoelaces in the playground. And a 3 is saying good morning to your teacher. What you do is you say good morning to your teacher, you force yourself for a week, and actually the 3 becomes a 2, becomes a 1, and then the whole thing slides down. So then you're climbing upwards in effect, and at some point in the future you can extrapolate out and see that asking that cute girl out on a date becomes a 3. So maybe a 4, but something that's within the realms of possibility. I think fear is, fear and anxiety are closely allied. Both of them come from our innate fight or flight programming, as it were, from probably the days we used to be running away from saber-toothed tigers instead of saber-toothed high school teachers. But it's if a saber-toothed tiger is going to attack you, you have 2 options: fight it, so get out your club and a couple of rocks, or run, flight. But those are kind of fear / anxiety, kind of instinctive responses, and those are the things that we kind of have to learn to become aware of, to learn how to control to some extent, and to learn how we can modulate them by exposure. As I touched on a couple of days ago, I learned recently that Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, has an approach that he teaches Amazonians that when trying to figure out a new product, one of the exercises you can do is don't try and figure out what the customer needs, but figure out what the customer doesn't need. Or when future planning, don't try to figure out what will change, try to figure out what won't change. And that kind of reverse thinking resonates a bit with me a bit, and I think it's very valid in a lot of ways. I had a thought that Christianity gets a pretty bad rap for the commandments type approach, like thou shalt not. But if we look at Christianity as a means by which we can reach some kind of state of spiritual enlightenment, said in a slightly Buddhist tone, or develop a relationship with our Creator, said in a Christian tone. It's very hard to tell somebody what to do. It's like, alright, go to church and pray all the time, and the person comes back, I don't feel anything. Okay, go climb Mount Everest. I still don't feel anything. I think the journey is so personal that it's very, very difficult to effectively guide people along that path if the person is interested. However, people are obviously becoming more and more interested in spiritual stuff because of meditation for one thing. So you could look at the commandment type philosophy of Christianity and Judeo-Christian teaching as effectively a Jeff Bezos type approach to life. It's like, okay, I'm not going to tell you how to do it, but I can tell you how you can not do it. And when seen through that lens, perhaps the commandments become more palatable. So why would you want to follow religious beliefs and or develop a spiritual aspect of your life? I would argue that a person without any spiritual component is like a dog with 3 legs. And there's plenty of replacement legs for spirituality. And typically we only need that leg, that stabilizing 4th leg in times of instability. Be that losing your job, losing a relationship, losing a family member, numerous traumatic things, that losing a parent, losing a child, all of these things can and will happen to us during our lifetime. There's no avoiding horrible, traumatic, painful things in life. And when confronted with such destabilizing moments, we really need a fourth leg, to think of the dog analogy. What are the other three legs? Very good question. I would say the first leg, maybe the front left, is the physical, your physical body. The second leg is the mental, so your brain. The third leg, what is the third leg? Yeah, I don't know, maybe, let me think about that one. And then the fourth leg is the spiritual. The tail is superfluous for this example. So, jumping back to this well thought out analogy, when we have a traumatic or painful event in our lives, we tend to cling for something to stabilize us. We lose our kind of way in a sense, and there are plenty of those to be found. There's plenty of fourth legs available. Let's say alcohol is one, drugs another, how would you say it? Casual relationships another, exercise, like to the point of addiction another, and finally we stumble upon the spiritual just as I'm walking under this tree, which is pretty well planned by myself, and that is, let's say, a real fourth leg made of dog's muscle and dog's bones and dog's skin and dog's fur, as opposed to like a wooden fourth leg made out of drugs, alcohol, other vices, workaholicism possibly, you know. So like actually having a fourth leg can be pretty damn useful. I think I figured out what the third leg is. I think it's relationships. So there was a Harvard study conducted over 70 or 80 years where they studied people from student age all the way through until their old age and passing away, and they found that the most important thing for happiness and a sense of fulfillment in life is not worldly success, money or fame, but rather solid, close, loving relationships.